Hi everyone, welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. I'm Ginette Biro, and today we had such a great episode. We talked about a ton of stuff, so there's lots of information. We talked about the Aries Moon, changing generational patterns. We talked about wholesome relationships. We talked about understanding the balance of your water signs and your fire signs and how that all applies to earth signs and air signs. We talked about a ton. But it's a great episode, so grab your coffee or tea and join us for another episode of Spirit Coffee Talk. Okay, welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. I'm Ginette Biro, and I'm joined here with Elyse Catherine and Lisa Richmond. We are the mediums and channelers of Avalon Spirit, and in Spirit Coffee Talk, we sit and chat about whatever, either what's going on this week energetically in the news, or just tune into our guides and bring it straight through. So thank you all for joining us. We're happy to have you here. And this week we are diving into this crazy full moon energy that we had. The Aries full moon just on Wednesday was way more potent than I think the three of us felt ready for. I know for me specifically, it pushed my buttons, but not, I have a lot of buttons that can be pushed from energies and from spirits and concepts, but I can usually kind of like chew on it from a human perspective. But this moon was like, no, you were going to feel this in your body, in your muscles. And I felt fiery inside the whole day. It was amazing. But when I surrendered to it, I found the next day I felt so much more freedom. So that's my nutshell. I know we'll go into it more, but how did you guys feel about the moon?
Elyse?
It was intense. I found that leading up to it, I was not sleeping. Like I was being woken up in the middle of the night. And it was interesting because I felt kind of tuned out for myself. Like I really couldn't, when I like tune in and be like, okay, what's going on? It was like I couldn't get a whole lot for myself. I could do readings, I could connect for others, I was getting messages for other people. But like for myself, I was just kind of in this little bubble. And there's been some really kind of like weird developments in the last week in life, things that like not planning on, things that I was like, I don't know where this is coming from. It's just random. Um, and so that was kind of leading up to it. And then I found, because it was on Wednesday, right? So Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday, Thursday, I felt like I had just chugged 7 pots of coffee. Like I literally felt like if you were like, Elyse, scale this wall right now, I'd be like, okay. And I would just, up I go. Spider-Man it up the wall. Just like up I go. I was
Yeah.
wired, like just wired. And there was even a couple of parts where like yesterday afternoon, I was sitting on my couch and my heart rate was at like 110. And I was sitting there, my heart is pounding, and it felt like an anxiety attack. But my brain wasn't anxious. Like nothing was happening. It was just fully in my body. I was getting lots of, similar to what you were saying, Jeanette, like triggers where something would upset me or like frustrate me, whether it was somebody else or my own, like when you stub your toe and then you get super frustrated. It was like those little things that were just kind of like thing after thing after thing. And even I found too, the morning after the full moon, I woke up and it was like go time. Like normally I like to start my morning slow and have a coffee and cuddle with my dogs. And I like had my laptop out and I was in it. And I'm like, what is happening? It was just that intense, fiery energy where I was going from like 0 to 100 all of a sudden. And I couldn't stop myself if I tried.
That actually makes me feel better because I thought, because my sun sign is Aries, although it's like your moon sign that is more affected by the full moon, is what I just learned. But anyway, my sun sign is Aries, which is fire. So Aries and Aries moon, I was like, I thought maybe that's why I was like, "Ugh," but no, I like everything that I read prior to the full moon, and we had talked about like the planets coming back into alignment and things opening up, and then the full moon, and I knew that it was going to be big. Like I knew, I could tell it was coming through, that the full moon was going to be a big deal. But I really didn't anticipate how much it was going to affect me. Like, cause when you know, when you like go on your page and you look at all the write-ups of what the full moon really brings, and I found like the overwhelming theme of this full moon was, you know, doors opening up, things letting go, intensity actually decreasing so that you can open up and see with clarity. And so I was anticipating that this full moon we'd be like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I feel like open, and it's, you know, like, oh, the stress is just off my shoulders, and this full moon is just like bringing in grace, when it's not. It was like a blowtorch for me to like ignite, right? And I mean, good to ignite and go forward, definitely. But like, my family can probably attest to this. Like my BS meter, like my ability to sit back and be like, okay, well, what do you think we should do? Or, well, I'll give you space to be able to figure this out. Like, no. I was like, get it in order. You know what to do. I know what to do. So we're not having this conversation anymore. Like, I had zero ability to like sit back and be like, okay, well, let's see how this plays out. It's like, no, 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 no. If you want something, get it. And this is how to do it. Everybody knows better. Why are we like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like I had zero ability to hold back. It wasn't that I was stressed or anything like that. But like Elyse said, I felt like I could crawl up the walls. Like, I was like, let's go. You know, like, what do we need to do? Get her done now. Which is quite I think, like, kind of in my past, like more of a masculine energy for me, but that's how I felt the energy came in with the full moon. So I'm glad it's kind of calmed down a little bit. Yesterday was still pretty go, but today I felt like a little bit more at ease, I'd say.
You know what I really liked about it too, though, is as much as it triggered for me very 3D like energy, like the fieriness inside, it also highlighted for me how much I've grown. And because of like what I would normally just be mad at or aggressive about or impatient about or whatever, I was able to like feel it and then be like, does that matter? I'm like, nope, not that one.
Yeah.
And it's like I could check off a bunch of things that I was like, oh, like even a year ago, I would have just like blown up about that, or it would have been a way bigger deal. And I was like, oh, I could pass that off. As much, and also, even silly situations, I could still be very conscious in it. And an example of this is like, my son was going in the fridge to find something to eat. And he's like, Mom, what do I eat? And I'm like, go in the fridge and find something. Like, you can also go to the fridge and look inside and see what you want to eat. There's lots of stuff there. And he's like, he wants to eat this one yogurt and not the other one that's almost empty. He wants to open a new one. And he's like, I want to open this new one. And my first reaction, because I was fiery and impatient, was like, why? Finish the other one. Finish the other one first. And then I was saying that to him and he's looking at me like, all right. And then I was like, no, wait a minute. Mom needs an attitude adjustment right now, because you know what? It doesn't matter if you eat that one or that one. It's going to get done and I need to chill. So you choose for you, buddy. I'm going to take a moment because I need to like chill my attitude. And he looked at me. He's like, okay, Mom.
Okay.
And I laughed because even in the moment of being like fiery, where I would have been like, just eat the other one. I was like, no, I this is ridiculous. And I'm going to just call myself out to him, which made him laugh, which made me conscious of it. And then I shifted it.
Kids love it when you call yourself out.
Can I say though, like, I don't know, kids, I have dogs, but I feel like when we look, I was having this conversation with someone the other day who is in a much younger generation than me. And I was talking about how I feel like through, you know, our generation, some of, you know, the other generations, but our generation and younger back earlier, I don't know what you would say, but like the younger people than us, we like, there's this real shift in our own healing and our own self-awareness. And you're seeing that start to trickle out and be a lot more present in the younger generations. And I think when we look at everything that's going on in the world, it's like, that is such a testament to where we have the ability to go. And I think that's such a beautiful example, because it's that like unlearning of, just as parents are humans, so are kids. And sometimes we won't necessarily say the thing that you said, like, hey, as a parent, I don't always get it right. You do you. Like, I need an attitude adjustment this time, not you. So like, there you go. And that kind of like our own growth, it's just a beautiful example, I guess I'm trying to say, of how our own growth, whether we're like holding space for other people or doing readings or whatever it is, even just like showing up in friendships or relationships, our own growth and our own self-awareness trickles down. And I think we're just going to start to see that more and more and more as the younger generations start to grow up. They're going to have a different level of emotional regulation and awareness that maybe us and our parents' generations and before weren't ever taught. So like, how do you
No,
know it unless you experience it and learn it on your own?
totally.
That's true. You know, when I saw this really beautiful quote that speaks to that, and I don't remember the exact quote, but the idea was, it was like, it's an amazing quote, but I don't know it.
I'm not going to tell it.
It was, the thought was that most kids don't realize that they're also watching their parents grow, right? Because as kids, you think your parents already know everything. But like as a parent, you realize you are constantly growing and still growing and still growing. And
Oh,
so when I look back at my parents from that perspective now, I think like, man, they were still growing as people. They hadn't stopped and they still haven't, but they were still growing and figuring it out. Which when I read that, I was like, yeah. And then I remember making a point of like, okay, I want to really let my kids know then when I learn something new or when I mess up or when I, anything, like call myself out so they can always see that even adults are still growing and learning and evolving.
no,
Right. So
totally.
I
They're our
love what you're
biggest
saying.
teachers. I think they're our biggest teachers, right? We learn so much
Yeah.
from the generations, like whether it's your kids or whether it's like just the generations coming forward, because I feel like we talk about this more and more and more. Consciousness is like waking up a bit and we're raising in frequency, and they're the ones that came in to do this. They're the ones that came in to make that shift and change. So I look even at my like 13-year-old daughter and how she describes things and how she's self-aware and stuff, and I'm just like, wow, like you can tell that you came in a different generation because you're here to change in a different way. And then my littles, like they just like skip right past the whole like insecurity of who they are, and they're just like, and I like that. Like I like to sit back and be like, teach me, right? I listened to an amazing speaker. She, I can't remember her name, Dr. Shafali. Have you heard of her?
Mm-hmm.
She's unbelievable. Anyway, she talks about how like kids aren't your, like you don't own your kids, right? You don't own them. They've come in, they've chosen you to come in, and then it's you that's able to help them be who they're supposed to come here and be.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's our job as parents or mentors or whatever it is in your relationship with a child or a younger generation to say, like, who are you? You continue to teach me who you are. I'll continue to learn who you are and then try to facilitate the best way I can in raising you up in that particular place, in that particular individual. And I think that's what like humbles me lots when I get to the point where I'm like, no, what are you doing? Like, as if you're doing that. I'm thinking, no, this is all my baggage. This is all my stuff. But anyway,
And I think that same thing applies to even spouses too. Because sometimes I think too, when we get married or are in a serious relationship, we think like, okay, that's who the person is now, and that's who I've married, not recognizing that they're going to keep learning and changing and growing, as
totally.
are we going to keep learning and changing and growing. And sometimes, like I know in the beginning of my relationship with Trevor, it's like he knew who I was and I knew who he was, and we were going to just go forward. And then it's like I started growing and changing a lot, and he was like, hey, hold on, who the heck are you? And then
Totally.
he started growing and changing. I'm like, who the heck are you? Right? We're like, what? And then it was when we really realized, like, no, we made a commitment to witness each other grow and change is what we actually did.
Hmm.
Not to stay the same together, but can we walk beside each other as we grow and
Totally.
change?
Totally. Because
Right?
you're not dependent on him for your growth.
Yeah.
You're growing independent of him, and it's like him as a partner is there to illuminate what it is that you use, have, grow with, and you vice versa. And that's the partnership, not, the old belief of you're my other half. You complete me. It's like, no, 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 I'm complete and I'm whole.
Yeah.
The partnership is there to continue to help each other grow independently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally think so. Wow, we just covered a whole bunch of things from that moon.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is I was kind of seeing it like come
We're in a
around
big
full
conference.
circle because when we're talking about the moon and Jeanette, what you were saying around like I was able to, even though I felt fiery and even though things were like triggering me and I was getting, irritated or feeling things in my body, it was like I could still step back and see the growth and the reflection of that. And I think, everything that we've been talking about is kind of like a culmination of that, in that it's not to ever say that the old ways of being were wrong or bad, or like we should shame ourselves or shame past generations for like not being conscious enough, because you hear a lot of that stuff, right? Like now is the time that we're going to change the world, and it's like, well, maybe, and they changed the world too, right? It all had to kind of come full circle. And for some reason I'm being shown to talk about this, but I was doing a reading for someone the other day and I saw this really interesting image that I was like, oh, I haven't seen this before. So it was like a tower. So this person, they had a lot going on in their life, right? Everything felt like it was an upheaval and kind of falling apart. And she felt like it's too much. There's too much going on. And I saw this image of like when they demolish a building, and it like kind of like boom, 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 boom. And you can see it kind of like blow up and then like crumble downward. And the whole idea was that like, once the detonation happens, you can't stop it, right? Like once the ball's rolling, it's going to happen. You have to complete the fall. We can't pause it halfway through and be like, okay, we're going to take a break. We realize it's too much. We're going to just pause this demolition and only let the building half crumble. It's like, no, we have to let it fall completely. But what they showed me was that as it crumbled, the rubble fell into this like sacred geometric shape. And it was like, it fell into this new pattern essentially of which to rebuild on. And, we've talked a lot about like, starting from scratch, building from a new foundation. You have to bring everything down in order to like, those are things that we've talked about in multiple different spirit coffee talks. But I just feel like we're kind of at this place where we're almost, some people, things are still falling apart, but we're almost kind of being able to step back and see this like rubble in a geometric pattern or a sacred geometric pattern that we're like, okay, this is the template. This is the thing. This is what we build upon. This is the new blueprint for how we build this new building from a way different perspective. Does that mean the old building was garbage? No, like it still served a purpose. People lived and worked in it and it was a shelter for people. Like it still had purpose and meaning and benefit, but it's not really fitting anymore. So let's let it crumble to then rebuild from a different pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a great thing because it's really honoring the ancestry, really, of things, families, people, progress of humanity. Like everything from where we are right now had to come from somewhere, and there had to be growth that led to this point. So instead of like crapping all over that, we can honor and respect where it came from and also see where it's led to now. So I really like that analogy. Yeah. Sorry. She's like playing slide hockey on the floor here. I don't know how noisy it is for you guys, but I'm trying to ignore it. But she's like sliding
She's
back and
that
forth.
fire energy, that Maddie, she's amped up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you guys find there's a difference in your pets with the moon too? Like we obviously see it in the kids and stuff, but do you notice a difference in your pets?
Yes and no. I feel like the old one, he's just like old and chill. But well, sort of. The young one though yesterday was like amped up. Like,
oh, really?
Oh yeah, he was like sprinting up and down the stairs and like had a toy and was flipping it all around, and like he'll play like that sometimes, but I had already walked him. I had already, like, normally they're not really like that, but he was, yeah, last night. It was more actually last night for some reason. So I don't know if he kind of rode the energy out and then went a little batty, but yeah, he was living his best life last night.
Maddie was nutters.
Yeah.
She was totally nuts. We took her to the dog park. She was running so fast, like so much energy to burn out. Her front feet couldn't keep up. So she was sliding her chest on the grass as her back feet keep pushing her through. Like I was like, wow, that's quite the circles. And she just kept going. So definitely saw it in her. How about yours, Lisa?
Oh, they were crazy. My cat gets pretty crazy. My dogs have been really sick.
Mm.
They got kennel cough really bad, like really, really bad. And so they've been kind of on the mend. But yesterday I took my big one, Morgan, out for a walk with my daughter, and we went like hiking way, way, way up by Kalmalka Lake. We got to the top, and Sarah's my daughter, we found this huge tree. It's a huge tree, and it's in the middle of like Cal Park. It's a provincial park, like on a mountain overlooking the whole Okanagan Valley. So beautiful. So I'm like, Sarah, let's go. Obviously, we need to sit in that tree, right? And she's like, like it's that. So yes, we did. So we found this huge branch, and her and I are just sitting in this tree, right? Feet dangling. And Morgan's, I have her on a long leash, and I hook her into the little piece of the branch right beside me so she doesn't, you know. And all of a sudden, this huge buck comes down the side of the mountain, and Morgan starts like, like, right, going crazy. I'm like, Sarah, look, there's a buck. And she's like, what? Like, she didn't see it at first. And then all of a sudden, like, it just sat there and looked. And then Morgan and this buck were like eye to eye. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how beautiful and like magical and all this stuff. And all of a sudden she's like barking, and he's like, he comes closer. And there's that moment where we're like, oh boy, like this deer, I assumed that it'd be like, oh, dog barking at me, I'm gonna leave, right? Mm-mm. So he starts like coming closer, and Morgan's going crazy. Sarah, my 13-year-old, who's usually not like fight, like, I don't know, she usually wouldn't do this, but she like we both saw it at the same time that this was not going to be good if we didn't do something. So she flies out of the tree, jumps down onto like the side of the mountain, goes over and like takes Morgan down. Like she like took her down so that she would stop.
Yeah.
And like she turned around and she like stood there like that, which is not like Sarah's like normal whatever. And this buck kind of backs down and looks away. And meanwhile, I'm sitting in the tree still like watching the whole thing go down, right? And I'm like, whoa, like good for you, Sarah. Like I didn't actually think anything was good, but there was that split second where it's like, oh, something could happen here. You know what I mean? And it was like this exchange of energy. And then Sarah like stood there, and then the deer then went away. And then we like unhooked her, and we're like, maybe we should like head back kind of thing. And Sarah was like, oh, like I feel really funny. I feel kind of like a buzzing in my ear. And I'm like, that's adrenaline, dear. Like you just went through like your fight or flight. And I didn't realize that you had some fight in that fight or flight. Like it was like this insane exchange of energy between the buck, Sarah, and the dog. I don't even know why I'm telling the story, but it was unbelievable. It was such an exchange of energy. And I felt like it was super connected to this, I don't know, this moon. And I don't know how. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that experience?
I really feel like the moon lit up everything on planet Earth, though. Like any sentient being was lit up on planet Earth to like to reignite something, right? Like just like you told me, Lisa, you need to reignite something, um, and I did, right? And I feel like it was like turning on these sparks for a lot of people, and I think to really have people, animals, energies move with the momentum we have going now with all the planets going direct. Like I feel like it was igniting sparks for so many on the planet, like forward movement, like okay, we are going forward, humanity and earth beings, yeah.
I just did a quick Google because I was like, there's some symbolism there. And so the one thing says bucks embody the masculine aspects of the deer symbolism, including speed, stamina, and grace. Also, additional qualities, including leadership, regeneration. And then another one talks about like stamina, maturity, spiritual enlightenment. So it really feels like, and we talked about this, I remember a few weeks ago or a month ago or so, that the Mercury going direct, I think on Monday the 18th, the full moon on the Wednesday, that was like a huge changing point. And then when we think about how fiery it was, it's like, okay, like we're moving forward now. It's that, again, that masculine energy of action, of things happening, of things speeding
Totally.
up, of it's go time. And I know, Ginette, you've talked about that on your podcast too, with the energies. So
Mhm.
it's interesting that it's all kind of like coming together and presenting itself as like, yeah, we're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to see how cool this is to exactly what you guys are talking about? So I was like feeling into which deck I should pull from. I'm like, I feel like there's a message, and I pull one. I'm like, no, wrong deck. I'm like, wrong deck. This is why though, because they like spirit will lead two things. So you're talking about the masculine, and I was like, what energy are we in now currently? And so we had the masculine, literally, being ignited from fire to then move into water, which Scorpion is water. This is initiation by water, to move into action so that the feminine can
No
carry
way.
it forward in momentum.
And isn't today or yesterday the first day of Scorpio?
Tomorrow, well, tonight, tomorrow is
Yeah.
the first day of Scorpio, and Scorpio's water. So we move from fiery masculine into feminine water, but forward movement together. Like this is meant to be moving together now,
So
masculine,
the
feminine together.
masculine is the ignition, right? And then once it's ignited in this forward momentum, it's kind of like the lead gets taken with balancing back into the feminine.
Balancing back, yeah.
I
Totally. And
love
so
it.
think of like Sarah jumping down in front of that stag and like balancing the masculine, right? She
Yeah,
was like, I'm here too.
believe it. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. Like, yeah, totally. She's like jumps down, she's like, Morgan, no. And she like turns around and she's like faces it, right? And this butt kind of like goes back and then kind of goes up the side of the mountain again. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
That's so
So,
cool.
okay, quick then before we end, what does this forward momentum in the feminine energy look like?
So I continue to see sparks of ignition. So like sparks of following through with like your desires and like your desires to create, your desires to become, your desires to manifest stuff for not only self but like the collective, because feminine often is doing for the collective,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, what are the sparks? Like, okay, actually, it's funny I'm saying sparks. Okay, look at this card close up. There's literally
Oh, yeah.
sparks coming from her. But she's like, although the masculine, this is what's really interesting because they were like, look deeper into the cards. So she's sparking with fire, although feminine is usually water. But then the masculine here is holding the water and transmuting and moving with the water through heart consciousness. So again, it's this pairing of masculine and feminine embracing and connecting through. So it's not the feminine staying all watery. It's like
It's not
both.
polarities. It's
No,
intertwinement.
exactly.
It is the connection of the two. It's like how it intertwines into each other versus masculine, feminine, right?
It's not about polarity. That's
Love
the key.
it.
And I feel
Because
like,
forward momentum with feminine creation and creativity is what's going to make change, right? Sorry, Elise.
no, no, okay. I feel like too, a piece that they're kind of saying right now. So I'm not super, I'm into astrology. I'm not well versed in astrology. So for me, like Lisa, you were talking about how you, I think I can't remember if it was on the recording or before, but about your sign and it. There's fire aspects in your chart, and that you thought this moon was going to mean something because it's Aries and you're connected to that. And it's interesting because as I was sitting here, I was getting this understanding of like as we're shifting into more of a watery sign, people who are maybe more, because I'm more watered and I'm Libra, Pisces, Pisces. So I actually tend to show up more Pisces in my life than I do my sun sign, which is Libra.
Mhm.
And so the understanding that I got is that if you're watching this, say, and you're like, oh, I'm not getting that, like, I'm not really having that forward momentum, they're going to be working through it through the signs. So it's not just like all or nothing right now. And if you're not feeling it, well, sucks for you. I get the sense that like as we move into a water sign, those who are really watery might feel more of a shift and that momentum happening, because it's about balancing that fire, that water, all of it out. And then even when you talk about like air signs and earth signs, it's going to look different based on how you kind of show up. And so if you're feeling like, oh, I'm not really seeing this yet, or nothing's really happening yet, or I'm not really like, I don't get it, it's not happening for me, it's like, no, it will. We're just kind of like working through it, because if everybody went through it at once, we'd probably all, our heads would explode. So it's like it's coming in different ways based on how you need to balance out and how where you sit more, I guess.
Mhm.
There you go. That's cool.
I agree. And it's funny, that was actually echoed. I was talking to an astrologer yesterday, and she was saying exactly that. Because I was like, how do I read my signs and how should I do this? Because she'd done my birth chart, but also my near death experience chart as a secondary birth chart, which then gives me like 6 signs to choose from if I'm looking at sun, rising, and ascendant. Sorry, sun, moon, and rising. She said, go with what is happening currently in the sky. So I love how you were saying, like, you'll move through it according to your chart with what sign it's in, right? So if someone's really watery, now that we're in Scorpio and a watery sign, then there'll be more emphasis on the watery nature of self,
So what's
right?
the
Which
watery nature of self? How would you explain that?
the more like emotional nature of self, like the more feminine, emotional, flow, dreamy kind of
So then
version.
how do you think that earth signs are affected by the fire and water then?
I asked her that question and she said the earth signs, it depends on if there's anything within their lives that needs to be burned off
Mm,
or
washed away.
washed away, or is it in the fertile growth period, right? Where water nourishes the land or the fire has burned and it's so
Ah,
it depends on where they are in their journey too to amplify that energy. So
that's a
say,
cool way of looking at it. Hey,
yeah, so like
is the
say there's
water
an
making it grow, or is it stuff that needs to be burnt off and let go of? Right? Have you
yeah.
planted the seeds, or are you getting rid of the stuff?
Exactly. So if the earth sign person looks at what their life is like, then they can suss out like, am I in the flooding time or am I in the like nourishment time? You know, and kind of move with that. It was really neat. So it's funny that we landed on this today too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And this really helps for people to understand how then a moon, like a full moon in a fire sign, will affect you if you're primarily, let's say, water or primarily fire or earth or a little bit of combination. So you can start to like draw the pictures in your head almost like how fire reacts with land, earth, or water and water, and air, and how it can ignite it and really if it's air, right, then you can really bring air with fire. It's like, wow, this is really bringing it into my attention. Like I'm coming straight forward into it, right? Because you can kind of like create the whole story in your head visually when those elements connect.
Yeah.
I like that. I've never really thought of it that way, actually, to be completely honest. I've never put that into like a visual. Like that's how I learn, kind of that's how I is in the visual kind of. And so I've never really done that. So this is really interesting. I'm curious for anyone watching if this is something that you've done or if this is like new information. I think it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
That's for
All right.
sure.
Well, I think we covered like 9,000 things, which
There was
is so
literally
awesome.
no rhyme or reason to anything except it all kind of somehow intertwined.
Can we
It
also
just needed
just
to come
note
up.
that it was like a fiery energy and we were like, here, 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 here,
Totally.
here,
Bing,
here,
bing,
here.
bing, 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 bing.
True. Especially if today is the last day of fire, right? We might as well get it all out there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Funny.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you guys for this wonderful conversation, and thank you to all of you who joined us. Hopefully, you pulled some really neat pieces from here to help you through your weekend as we step into Scorpio, watery Scorpio energy of movement, though, again, balanced, non polarized, harmonious movement forward. This is a really good phase that we're in, so you guys can really make the most of it. If you're liking these videos, please do subscribe and share for more. Also, check out avalonspirit.com. And somebody had asked before for our Instagram handle, so you'll find that all in the write ups underneath, and you can follow us on our individual pages. And we will be back next week.